Broadcasting from the world headquarters of the National Floor Safety Institute is America's slip and fall guy, Russ Kenzie.
This is America's slip and fall guy, Russ Kenzie. Thanks for listening to my podcast. Since I started in this industry about 25 years ago, one of the questions that was always asked of a potential client is, do you have a slip and fall problem? And funny as it may sound, most of them would answer by saying, well, sure, that's why we have insurance. Well, I always thought that was an odd way to answer the question. It's kind of like asking somebody, do you have cancer? And they say, well, yeah, that's no big deal. I have insurance. Well, it is a big deal because you don't want to have cancer and you certainly don't want to have slips and falls. Most of the claims that are being paid, most slip and fall injuries that are being reported and paid by way of claims is obviously picked up by the insurance industry. And joining me today is Thad Whittier with Allied Insurance. Thad, we're going to ask you a few questions about your industry and how you go about addressing the growing problem that you see with your clients, policyholders regarding slips, trips, and falls. So we welcome Thad Whittier.
Thank you.
You're welcome. On chapter 6 in my book, Falls Aren't Funny, I have a whole chapter just designated to the insurance industry, how the insurance industry goes about processing and paying or denying claims. And if you could, Thad, just kind of quickly, spell it out. You have a policyholder, they have a slip, trip, and fall event. What happens? How does the system work? How does a claim get processed?
Well, typically when an incident occurs with a trip, slip, fall, it gets reported into our claims department as a claim or an incident. That claim is filed, and depending on what the circumstances are around that claim, there may be an investigation or there may not be an investigation. It just depends what the surrounding factors are. I'm in the business to prevent claims. So I'm pre-claims, if you will. So I'm in the loss control department, and I help clients with pre-incidences or loss control, if you will.
When you say an investigation being done, who would perform that investigation?
Well, we'll use our internal staff, or we'll hire third parties to come out to where the incident occurred and go through a series of tasks, such as interviews, investigations with, pictures taken and measurements taken. It's a full-blown investigation.
And like surveillance video, would that be help? Is that the sort of thing you look for?
If available. If definitely, that would be one of our top couple questions that we would ask while on site, to see if there was any surveillance video capturing a specific event. Yes.
Okay. So somebody falls, gets hurt, an investigation is performed, information or data is being collected. That then goes to a claims person within your company?
Yep. That's
okay.
How
So
it works.
A claims person then reviews that information. They obviously are trained and have skilled knowledge regarding the incident. And if they say, hey, this is something that's a problem, do you go back to the policyholder and say, hey, you shouldn't have had a wet
Absolutely.
floor? Or is that how it works?
That's how it works. That's what our claims department handles. So they're claim adjusters, and they go through their process with their toolkits that they have available to them.
Right. And so, I've heard a lot, and I'm sure you do even more. What's the big deal? I have insurance. They pay the claim. Well, it is a big deal from your side, Thad, because, you can actually deny coverage, right? I mean, you'll have policyholders that will lose their insurance coverage if they have too many claims or too big of a claim, right?
That's typically how it works. I mean, we underwrite accounts according to the historical loss experience. And so if an account has poor loss experience that isn't approving or aren't taking the correct steps to help mitigate those claims, certainly that is a huge factor in how we underwrite a specific account. Yes.
So premiums are based on averages within an industry. A lot of people don't understand. They think they think money grows on trees with the insurance industry. Yeah, they just have unlimited funds. Well, real quickly, it's not that simple. It's there's
No.
a dollar amount assessed by way of a premium that's based on a rather complex algorithm that's created by actuaries working within the insurance industry. If I'm stop me if I'm wrong here,
Nope,
Thad,
that's
but
correct. That's right. That's how we price up this, individual accounts based on a pricing model. Absolutely. And the historical experience plays a major role in that.
so if a policyholder has, wow, they got way too many claims and the experience algorithm demonstrates, then you take some form of action to encourage or require your
Yeah,
policyholder to do something. Give us an example of the things that you inform or require of your policyholders, not only to prevent slips, trips, and falls, but, in the event they had one.
So that's where our loss control department comes into play. We will do site visits where we go out there and assess, a risk assessment to determine what the extent of a trip, slip, fall incident may occur. And we provide either engineering type solutions to eliminate the exposure or administrative solutions to help mitigate a potential injury. So we do
How about,
site visits.
I'm sorry, how about some proactive events like, hey, before an event happens, we require or encourage our
Absolutely.
policyholders to test their floors, things, real simple stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a partnership with NFSI, National Floor Safety Institute, where we put together in a group setting or a team effort with Allied World and NFSI, where we put together a website where it actually goes through the ANSI standards for trip, slip, falls, provides a checklist, sample checklist, and other type of tools for our customers to use. We have training available, whether it be in PowerPoint with voiceovers or short video clips. And I think what our clients find one of the most valuable of this platform is, you guess you can call it a 1-800 hotline or help desk where you can ask an expert. And we have both domestic and foreign exposures or global exposures or customers that they can either call, and based on different time restraints, they can email if calling doesn't make sense, and we get an expert from NFSI responding to our customers in our proactive approach. So we have a multitude of tools to help our customers pre trip, slip, fall, which
Yeah,
we find very valuable.
what's been their feedback? I mean, you've been doing this for how long now?
I've been doing this for 30 years. The
No,
feedback,
I'm saying I'm sorry, the NFSI program has been about a year
it's
out
been
there.
about it's been about a year. The response has been excellent. We do have global accounts that access from lands afar and use this system quite often. And domestically, we definitely hit it out the park with the partnership and platform that we use with NFSI on preventative measures for trip, slip, falls.
Now, you mentioned you've been in the industry doing this for about 30 years.
Yes.
Okay, so you've seen a lot in your 30 years of experience and probably a wide range of issues. But how big of a deal, Thad, are slips, trips, and falls to your company, to the insurance industry?
Well, it's for leading loss drivers. Trip, slip, falls either ranks in our casualty book of business either number one or number two across our lines.
Wow.
The other one is soft tissue injuries, which a lot of those come from trip, slip, falls as well, from coming off ladders or walking on surfaces and they get sprains. But yeah, trip, slip, falls, if it's not number one, it's number two.
Now, is that in terms of incidents, claims, or dollars? I mean, how number one or two, and how do you measure that? I guess
That's
I'm
a good
asking.
point. Both frequency and severity. So both number of incidences on a frequency basis as well as dollars spent or severity basis.
Got it. And so proactively, you're now encouraging, and how many policyholders have access to this NFSI safety portal that you described? How
In the
many?
tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. Wow.
Yep.
Wow, that's impressive, and certainly innovative. Now, we talked. I asked earlier about testing floors, and the other things that NFSI is big on promoting is using NFSI certified products. You brought up the standards. How does it all work? For your policyholders, what is it that you're bringing to them that say another insurance carrier would not deliver to that same policyholder?
Well, above and beyond offering an interpretation of the standards that's very concise and easy to understand, as we all know, when we're looking at different standards, they can be several hundred pages long. Whereas in our agreement with NFSI, we have a concise breakdown of each of the standards, so our customers can simply look at the standards and tell exactly what they're required to do and not to do. And I talked about earlier about the checklist and the training and the 800 hotline. But above and beyond that, we have an agreement with Traction Auditing that gives a discount to our customers for them to test their own floors. So that's a huge benefit. We just recently added that onto our platform as a value add. So I think we're going to get a lot more
More traction,
engagement
huh?
with their a lot more engagement with our customers, taking advantage of that discounted price for them to actually know on a scientific basis, are their floors slippery or not? And if they are, then we have solutions to help them correct those conditions.
Right. Well, Traction Auditing is a national auditing company. Many of the listeners may know of Traction Auditing. They've probably been doing this longer than anybody, and they test to the ANSI NFSI standards that you've been speaking about. And I guess a couple of questions about that. Testing slip resistance of floors is a really good and first indicator of risk. If you test to the ANSI NFSI B101.1 static coefficient of friction standard, or the B101.3 dynamic coefficient of friction standard, you'll come up with a value, an average value of how slippery your floor is. And that value will fall into one of three categories: high traction, moderate traction, and low traction. Of course, that's high risk, low risk, moderate risk, if you want to look at it that way. And so your policyholders can have testing done for them to those standards by Traction Auditing or another walkway auditor. In fact, you're a walkway auditor. Is that correct? You're a walk.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, it's a great service. It's because it takes the guesswork out of it. It's more science behind what the problem is. Again, it eliminates the guesswork or the artwork, if you will, and it gives you a concise picture. Are your floors slippery? High, low, or not? And it gives them a roadmap to correct the problem.
You also do the same with other products, right? You're working with other companies on recommending various types of products. Like I think you're working with New Pig and Traction Plus, the manufacturer of chemicals.
Absolutely.
How's that working?
We're working with New Pig on developing technical content to put on our site. It's more of the white papers. Again, just to educate our customers, give them the most up-to-date and qualified documentation out there on the trip, slip, fall and what some solutions may be, whether it be mats or a different type of absorbents, to assist them with solutions. Once we identify the problems, we want to be able to give our clients solutions, and that's how we work with some various companies such as New Pig.
So you're bringing best practices to your policyholders, where you can provide them the insight, the tools, products.
That's right.
And some things that are not products. For example, you're also producing policies and procedures, right? Safety policies, slip, trip, and fall prevention policies, and training procedures. Those are also available on your.
Absolutely. Yeah, we give them a template, and if there needs to be any more of a customization touch to it, we offer that as well. But we give them sample policies and procedures and checklists that they can use as they see fit. But then we come in from a consultation with our partnership with NFSI to address some specific areas they may need help with.
Right. Well, I know it sometimes seems simple, but how do you inspect a parking lot? What are you looking for? Obviously, trash or things that are out of place, but there are things that may be difficult to recognize, like are the curbs painted a contrasting color, or the wheel stops painted in a contrasting color to that of the adjacent pavement to make them more readily visible as to prevent an accidental trip and fall. We know that a big part of this problem, that is directly related to the elder victims. And I know you, like most insurance companies, actually track, who are these claimants, the policy, holders, who's falling on these properties. And so, how to inspect an entranceway, how to properly inspect a restroom. And it's different from industry to industry. A restaurant inspection of a dining room is different than, say, a larger, school property, or, a cafeteria in a school. So if I'm not mistaken, these policies and procedures that you have, that you provide, are industry specific, right?
Yeah, that is a great point, because one size doesn't fit all. We do have specific and targeted areas for our policies and procedures, as well as our checklist, whether it be walking down a hall, whether it be specifically a restroom, whether it be a parking lot, whether it be in a kitchen. So one size does not fit all when it comes to the given policies and procedures. So yes, it is very targeted and specific to the areas that may affect a specific business.
Now, you're a member of the ANSI Standards Committee, the NFSI B101 main committee on
Yes,
slip, trip, and fall prevention. So tell the listeners a little bit about that experience, how you serve on that committee, and how that kind of works. A lot of people have a difficult understanding or misunderstanding of how the standards developing process goes about.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been a very good experience. I've been on that committee for 4 years now, and when I first joined, my eyes were definitely open wider. All the industries were represented there. So as you could imagine, there is a lot of back and forth during these meetings, but it's very constructive. I mean, you can see some points with some industries where they may have concerns, and then you have different viewpoints from other industry specialists. But at the end of the day, the purpose is to make our floors and our experience with trip, slip, falls lessen to a point of zero. So bringing these experts together and these different representations of the various companies and industries, it's a great way to look at different viewpoints and then come to a mutual agreement to how these standards should be set and how they should be regulated throughout. So it's been an eye-opening experience, but it's been very beneficial in terms of getting the experience of talking to my various customers, because it's not just one industry. We cover a very wide variety of customers in several different industries, whether it be casinos or restaurants or U.S. civilians over on our military bases. So it's good to have that experience. It's good to see different people's perspectives, all in the mutual goal of making or experiencing less trip slips and falls. So it's been a great experience.
Well, the last and probably maybe some of the biggest one of the large questions that's often asked, and that's, okay, Thad, we're buying in. If we do all these things, we have our floors tested, we're using NFSI certified products. What are you going to do for me? All right, is there any type of discount? That's the biggest question we hear. Hey, do we get an insurance discount, or does Allied discount us?
That's a great question. And yes, it's a question that is often stated. And if you recall in our earlier part of our discussions, it's based on experience. That's typically how an account is underwritten, whether it be at Allied World or one of our competitors, but it's based on experience. So if you put in the right controls and you have success with those controls, it'll show in your experience, and ultimately you have lesser premiums in terms of dollar amounts.
Well, that's oftentimes the most misunderstood component. A lot of policyholders assume that, hey, if I do something like a good student driver discount, there's a benefit. And the point you're making is there is, in fact, a benefit. If you start reducing your slips, trips, and falls, there is a significant reduction or benefit by way of premiums and other things that may come by way of rewards. But that's not, do you hear the same thing? A lot of people just kind of misunderstand what those benefits are.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. That does come up. Those questions do arise, and rightfully so, because they want to know what they can get for implementing some controls. But again, it's to prevent these trip, slip, falls, and make your employees safer and healthier as a result, as well as customers, if you're dealing with the general public, safer. At the end of the day, it's based on your experience. So having a less number of those trip, slip, falls correlates to less premium. And then what we do is, as we talked about earlier, is give discounts on some solution providers, and traction auditing is obviously one of those, and working on some other discounts with other vendors such as New Pig as well. So yes, we do. We know what our clients are experiencing and their stance, and we are definitely assisting.
So if you had to wrap it up and say, hey, look, the top 3 things we would recommend as an insurer that our policyholders do, the top 3 things that they can do to prevent slips, trips, and falls, how would you prioritize, the 3 things they can do?
Yeah, well, for me, being a background in engineering, I always like to engineer out the problem. That would be my number 1. So know what your conditions of your floors are and put in corrective engineering controls wherever possible and feasible. That's number 1. Just try to eliminate the exposure altogether. So engineer out the exposure.
So if they have an inherently slippery floor, it may be the floor itself that needs to be replaced or put a different type of material in. Is that an example of what you mean?
That's an example. Yep. Or put a different type of or the surface, whatever it may be. Try to engineer out the exposure.
So they can know that by simply having their floors tested, right? They can have their floors tested for slippery, the coefficient of friction, and that'll give them an indication if A, they can safety treat it, or B, they can't, and they simply need to replace it with an alternative material. So that would be okay. What other things?
Training. It's by far and large, engineering out the exposure is the number 1 control. And then to a lesser degree would be the more administrative type of controls is the training. So train your employees, whether it be, putting these caution signs or warning pylons correctly, making sure mats are placed correctly, those sort of administrative or type of training controls. I mean, they're very important, but I can't emphasize enough how engineering out the exposure is. Mm-hmm. So that'd be my number 2.
And what's number 3? What's the third thing?
3, it's more of an obvious one, and it kind of coincides with number 2 is continually maintaining those floors to the best of your abilities.
Mm-hmm. Inspections, sort of thing.
Yep.
Make sure you're using the right cleaning products, that it's not leaving a film. Keep the floors dry. I mean, kind of hate to say it, the obvious.
Yeah, the obvious, absolutely. But there is human error, and that's why I try to engineer out as best and as feasible as possible. So I'll always have number 1 as the engineering, and then the administrative controls and maybe the inspections and other type of risk control activities after that.
Well, that's wonderful. We've been speaking with Thad Whittier from Allied Insurance. If somebody wants to get a hold of you or send you an email or call you, what's the best way they can reach you, Thad?
The best way is Allied World. Search on the internet. But if you'd like to talk to me specifically, which I would entertain any questions, would be Thad, THAD, Whittier, WHITTIER, at AWAC Services.com.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
I know.
Well, we appreciate the time you spent with us this morning, Thad. This has been and is America's Slip and Fall Guy, Russ Kenzior. Thanks for, again, listening to the podcast. And don't Remember, don't make your last step or your next step your last step. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.